If you've been waiting for Starfield to finally make its way to PlayStation 5, we've just gotten some very important details that you're going to want to know before launch day even gets here, because the preload date has officially been revealed, and just as importantly, the file size is absolutely massive, right in line with what we saw on Xbox and PC, which means this isn't just another download you can squeeze in at the last minute. This is something you actually need to prepare for ahead of time if you want to jump in right away on day one without any issues. Let's start with the preload timing because this is what determines whether you're playing immediately at launch or sitting there watching a progress bar. And according to recent PlayStation database updates, the preload for Starfield on PS5 is set to go live on April 5th, 2026, which gives players a 2-day window before the official release date on April 7th. And that's pretty standard for a game of this size, but it's especially important here because of just how large the download is. So if you pre-ordered a digital copy, you'll be able to install everything ahead of time and be ready the moment the game unlocks. Whereas if you're picking up a physical version, you'll still need to install data and likely download a day one patch, meaning you won't quite have that same instant access unless you plan ahead with your internet speeds in mind. Now let's talk about the biggest headline here, and that's the storage requirement. Because Starfield on PS5 is not holding back at all when it comes to how much space it takes up, with the base game coming in at 123.347 gigabytes for version 01.000.001. And that alone is enough to eat up a huge portion of the PS5's internal storage, especially if you're someone who keeps multiple large games installed at once. But it doesn't stop there, because additional content is already accounted for, including the Shattered Space expansion at 12.502 gigabytes and the Terran Armada content at 4.017 gigabytes, bringing the total potential install size to well over 140 gigabytes, depending on what you have downloaded, and that puts it firmly in the same category as the Xbox Series X and S and PC versions, meaning there's no real optimization difference here in terms of storage footprint. It's a massive game no matter where you play it. And this is where you really need to think ahead, because if your PS5 storage is already close to full, you're going to have to make some decisions, whether that means deleting older games, moving titles to external storage, or finally upgrading your internal SSD, because trying to download something this large at the last second is not a great experience, especially if your internet isn't the fastest. And this is exactly the kind of situation where preloading becomes less of a convenience and more of a necessity if you want to avoid frustration on launch day. Another thing worth pointing out is that preload will already include version 01.000.001 of the game, which means you're not just downloading a base disk version, you're getting a fairly up-to-date build right from the start, although it's still very likely that Bethesda will push out an additional update closer to release, which is something we've seen time and time again with major titles. So even if you preload, it's still a good idea to check for updates before you jump in on April 7th, just to make sure everything is fully optimized and ready to go. Beyond just the technical details, there's also new content arriving alongside the PS5 version that could significantly change how the game feels, particularly with the introduction of a major free update called Free Lanes, which focuses on expanding and improving interplanetary travel in a way that makes it more interactive and immersive, introducing a cruise mode that allows players to travel between planets at high speeds without being locked into a passive experience, meaning you can actually walk around your ship, interact with your crew, and manage your ship systems while in motion. And on top of that, travel itself becomes more dynamic with the addition of mid-journey encounters, which can range from combat situations to unexpected discoveries in space, effectively turning what used to be downtime into active gameplay. And that's a pretty meaningful evolution for the overall experience. What this really suggests is that Bethesda is continuing to refine Starfield in ways that go beyond simple bug fixes or minor tweaks, instead focusing on systems that directly impact how players engage with the universe. And for PlayStation players who are jumping in for the first time, this could end up being the best version of the experience right out of the gate, with improvements already baked in that early players on other platforms didn't have at launch, making this PS5 release feel less like a late port and more like an updated entry point into the game. So when you put it all together, the key things you need to remember are that the preload begins on April 5th, the full release is on April 7th, The base game alone is over 120 gigabytes, with additional content pushing it even higher, and there's a significant free update arriving at the same time that enhances core gameplay systems, all of which makes this a launch you definitely want to be prepared for ahead of time rather than reacting to at the last minute. If you found this video helpful and want to stay up to date on everything happening with Starfield and other major gaming releases, make sure to give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any future uploads. And if you want to go even deeper into gaming discussions, be sure to check out my Patreon, where the latest video is a look at whether Xboxes and PCs are starting to become the same platform, which is a really interesting conversation given everything happening in the industry right now. And as always, thank you for watching, and game on.